Before. I never saw him until about 20 minutes ago. His name is Michael Stevens.
That's
and
cool.
Michael's here with the Bahai Faith.
Huston Bahai community. Mm-hmm.
My topic today is going to concern the Race Unity Symposium that's held here annually at Huston Tillotson. I believe this is the 12th annual.
11th.
11th annual.
Mm-hmm.
And it's an event that I discovered quite by accident. I picked up the Villager one day
Mm-hmm.
and I went to the Race Symposium a couple of years ago.
Okay.
And I was pleasantly surprised, and I was really shocked because I'm in this so-called very liberal town that is supposed to care about liberal things, and I met very few people who had even heard of it.
Yes.
And so because of that, I thought it was something that I thought the Republican Party of Texas, Travis County Republican Party should be involved with because it's the right thing to do.
Okay.
And, you know, this is the Right Talk with Mike Lee show, and my old motto is, right talking leads to right thinking, which hopefully leads to the right action, and you end up doing the right thing. Everything is on the right, and I'm on the right. Everyone who knows me knows that I'm a conservative, and I loudly and proudly say I'm a Republican. Now, Mike, don't get him run out the station.
No, I'm good. I'm good.
Like I said, I just met him, and it's nice to meet you, man.
Yes, sir. Nice
Good
to meet you as
man.
well. Yeah.
Now, this Race Unity Symposium
Yes.
is just a joint effort between Huston Tillotson
Correct.
and the Bahai Faith Center, right?
That's correct. The Huston Bahai
Are
community.
you a Bahai member of the Bahai?
I am a member of the
Tell
Bahai
us
community.
something. Tell my audience something about that faith, because I didn't know nothing. I've gone to the center a couple of times because I'm curious,
That's correct.
and I was very interested in the service there,
Okay.
mainly because it's short.
Yes,
They don't keep you all day
No.
like they don't
No.
re-celebrate slavery and keep you in there singing for 5 hours.
No, sir. That's true. That is very true.
So tell my audience about the Bahai Faith.
So first of all, the Austin Bahai community is located, I forget the exact address, but it's on E.M. Franklin between MLK and Manor Road, so the old airport, the entrance. So that's where you can find the Austin Bahai Center. And the Bahai Faith it's one of the newest religions in the world. So it is considered, it's one of the fastest growing. It is considered a major religion. So along with Judaism, Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, Hinduism, the Bahai Faith, you can find it on all the continents, everywhere, in the world. Originally, the founder of the Bahai Faith is a gentleman. I say a gentleman. He's actually he was born of nobility in Persia, which we now know as Iran. Okay, and when he accepted his calling to bring the new message for humanity, he took on the name Baha'u'llah, okay, which means the glory of God. Okay, so this was in the late the 1800s, and so in the middle 1800s is when he was started to share his dispensation with a small group of followers in Iran, and then from there it spread. After many years of himself and his followers being, exiled and imprisoned and tortured, and there's some martyrs that are in the faith as well. So that's the general sense of it. We believe in one of the things that we believe in is progressive revelation. So the basic idea, and that's one of the things that distinguishes, I think, the Bahai Faith, as I understand it, from the other major religions. Baha'u'llah specifically said, or more or less made it very clear, that God is one, right? It's the same principle, the same God from beginning of time till now and into the future. Okay, so you have God sends messengers at each time for the various time periods for people, for humanity to learn what it is that they need to learn. So some of the earliest ones, Buddha, okay, Krishna, okay. Then we go to Jesus Christ, okay, Jesus the Christ. Then we go to Muhammad, okay. And then now Baha'u'llah is the latest manifestation to bring the newest message for this age.
Now, in that faith, is there something about that they recognize all of humanity as just one race?
Exactly. We say that there's only one. That humanity is one. So the idea of race is a construct.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So we know that, right? Everybody know. I shouldn't say everybody knows that now, but now that information is more widely understood and accepted. Okay. So yes, we say that humanity is one. We think of the idea of like a garden, right? That's one of the key ideas or themes of the Bahai Faith, or images. In a garden, it's they're all plants, okay? But some plants are low, some plants are high, some plants are shrubby, some plants the flowers are big, some are small. They all have different colors. So it's that idea, Yeah.
I know when I've gone to the center for service on a Sunday, it's a very diverse crowd.
Very much so.
I see, and it's kind of a laid back, kind of relaxed.
Very
It's
relaxed.
more like just a talk
Very relaxed.
and a lot of exchange, and it has some nice eats after
Oh,
the service too.
Yeah, it depends on what stage, but yeah, it's always something to eat afterwards.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, depending on the time of year, it might be a little bit more than others. But needless to say, you shouldn't be hungry when
No,
you leave. I mean, you can go wherever you want to go afterwards. You don't have to stay, but definitely, the way the Baha'i Center is set up, we have the area where we meet for our devotions and for the talks, as you were speaking of, and then afterwards we have like this gathering area where there's food and tables, and people sit out and we talk and that whole thing. Yeah, it's really
Have you worked much on the planning of the symposium this year at all?
Not me. I personally haven't worked much on the planning of the symposium this year. Not personally. In previous years, I have, but just because of personal and professional, obligations, I couldn't do as much this year. But I'm still participating and will still be in attendance because it's one of those things where it's very much like what you were saying with when you go. There's the diversity. I'd like to speak on that for a minute because one of the reasons why, if I can speak about my personal experience in becoming a Baha'i.
Do that.
Right. At the time, me and my wife, we were looking, we were searching, we were looking for some spiritual community that fit what we believe, what we knew for ourselves and what we wanted to give to our children.
Well, it's kind of non-traditional, isn't it?
Yeah.
What would you say?
On some, it's so funny that you say that. I mean, on some level, it's very traditional in the sense that it's conservative mostly, and there's some aspects of it that are conservative in terms of morality, in terms of ethics, okay, society, things, how those things are, how those things affect human beings, families. But then,
well, you're on the right show then.
Yeah, I know, yeah, definitely. That's why I kind of said that because, let me say it like this. You know how some, and this is not to cast any disparaging remarks on any other religion, because that's one thing we don't do. We all accept, but
we don't have to disparage them.
Exactly.
They disparage themselves enough.
Exactly. Exactly. So in religions, right? Particularly in from what I've observed in modern Christianity. Modern Christianity is kind of trying to find its way. Is trying to figure out how it fits in. In terms of like after the Protestant and evangelistic type situation.
Well, everything is evolving.
Everything is evolving. Okay. So I just noticed that I've gone to some, and they kind of go on the realm of like New Age, and
Right.
It's kind of New Age, and
Right.
they may or may not. I know some people go, well, I don't know. Some people like that, some people don't. Well, this situation, if you really, my personal experience, my personal opinion, when you compare like the Bahai Faith in a Bahai service, a Bahai gathering, like you said, it's pretty relaxed. There's not a lot of, what's the word I want to use? It's just very natural. It's just very organic. There's nothing like we have to refashion anything.
And they don't pass collection plates.
Oh no.
That's what's really surprising.
I mean, that's in fact one of the things about, when you're Baha'i, you can contribute to the Baha'i Fund. Mm-hmm. But if you're not a Baha'i, right, if you're just visiting, and you can be visited on the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 15th, 20th, 25th, 50th, 100th time, however many times it is that you visited us, there is we will never ask you for any money. There's no, in fact, if you tried to give, if you wanted to come and give money, you have to sign a card first to say you were Baha'i first, then you can give the money. Because other than that, we can't take your money.
Okay.
Yeah, that's very true.
Well, but it's just as I said, I've gone to the center a couple of times, and I kind of like it. But I don't. My wife is not. My wife producer may not be as adventurous as I am.
Okay, alrighty.
But it's kind of cool with me.
Yeah, I think so. That's what I was going to say.
Back.
Yeah, that's what I see for interview. That's what I was going to say, because we were looking, and at the time, my wife was working with an old friend of her family's. I'm going to tell you this story. So this woman was actually she was a Baha'i, and she was in Swaziland at the time in southern Africa. My wife is from southern Africa as well. Her dad is from South Africa, right? So they knew her. They were living in Lesotho at the time, okay? So somehow she met my wife's mother and father, okay? And so she was a little girl then. So somehow, like in I think it was 2003, 2004, we all arrived back here after various, our own journeys back here in Austin. So that's when I meet her. Okay. And my wife started, a few years later, my wife was working with her. Baha'i never came up at this point. But a few years later, my wife is they're working together. And I guess, from what I understand, there was a magazine sitting out on our friend's desk. And it was a Baha'i magazine. So my wife was curious. So she started looking. So then the friend invited her to come to the center. And my wife came home, I think, and she said, "Hey, check this out. Look at this magazine. Read this." And I was reading. I was like, and looking at the images, and like you said, it was like diverse.
Right.
Like people of all races, quote unquote races, ethnicity, culture, dress, all these things. So I was like, wow. So she said, well, yeah, she invited us to come, visit the center on Sunday. So we went there, and like you said, the devotions are only 30 minutes long. So the prayer time is actually 30 minutes long, and then we have an hour where we have guest speakers, primarily Baha'is, that come and talk about various aspects of the religion, society, all culture, all these different things, right?
Yeah, Dale got me one time when they had they were in my mouth.
There it is. That's it. So we went to the center, and we were sitting there, and prayers were being said in English, right? Prayers are coming from, there are readings from the Bible, readings from the Quran, readings from our Baha'i books. Prayers are being said in Arabic. Prayers are being said in, what was that? Siswati, I think it was the language. And then the music, there was music playing, it was like violin, some classical music. And then you see, one time they were singing a song from a group of people from Suriname, I want to say, or French Guyana, somewhere of those places. So it was very much, so basically, it was like, just come as you are, like literally bring who you are, where you're from, bring that, and everything is good.
Usually when I go there, I'm overdressed.
Well, you can, but see, that's the thing. If that's who you are, but I understand.
That's how I was brought up, because I was brought up in the Baptist church.
I understand. Me too. So I understand. You
put your Sunday best on.
Put your Sunday best on. But so you can still do that. But yeah, you probably be overdressed.
Yeah, but you see people there in jeans. You just see people in there. Just people came to church.
Yeah. And one of the, I'd be remiss not to say this. So one of the other languages that you hear oftentimes in the Baha'i, because of the origin of the Baha'i faith coming from Persia, now known as Iran, you have Farsi. Okay, so you have poems and prayers and recitations in Farsi as well. So if you're a person, like you said, that's adventurous and doesn't, I guess is open to, just curious.
Well, you have to have an open mind, actually.
Yeah, very much so.
And be open to new ideas and new way of looking at things.
I like that one, because I don't necessarily know if the ideas are necessarily new, but the new eyes to look new ways of looking at it.
A different way of looking at
things. Exactly, I agree.
Now the Race Unity Symposium, I kind of like it in a way.
Okay.
But in a way, it's not hard hitting enough, because there's still kind of like you don't want to offend anybody, the politically correct kind of thing. And sometimes I like to get a little bit have in getting your face kind of thing, because I'm kind of on the.
Okay.
I'm kind of an extremist myself.
Oh, okay.
I'm either all the way at one end or all the way at the other end. There's no middle ground for me.
Okay. Well, so so let me see if I can address that. So, generally speaking, once again, this is my experience, my opinion, right? My perspective. The Bahai Faith is moderate. We like the middle. You see what I'm saying? Even though, if you look at from the outside looking in, if one was to read certain things that we believe in certain ways, you would think that we're, it kind of might appear to be like we're very much on the fringe. You know what I'm saying? Or very much kind of like wanting to overturn, but that's not the thing. So basically speaking, in fact, I guess the best way to illustrate this.
It's kind of calm.
It's very calm. The best way to illustrate this, I would think, is when we look at the example of our Iranian Bahai community. In Iran, right, it's basically against the law to be a Bahai. If you're not a Muslim in Iran, it's bad news for you, right? Okay. But many Persian people in Iran that are Baha'is, they maintain their faith. They work within the system. You see what I'm saying?
Quiet.
They're quiet. They do what they do. They're just like, no, we just, they basically head down, do what we need to do so we can strengthen and grow, and that's what that is. It's not a thing of like, we're going to go out in the streets and we're going to, make all this noise and beat the pans, and no, we don't, I've never heard of anything like that. Okay. So so that's the idea, I guess the best example of that.
Can you share with my audience very much, what you may know about Louis Gregory?
Oh, for sure.
Tell us about that.
Okay, so the Symposium is named after a gentleman named Louis Gregory, okay? And Louis Gregory was one of the earliest, not only earliest acceptors of the Bahai Faith in America, but one of the early African-American people to accept the message of Baha'u'llah in terms of the Bahai Faith. So I'm going to read just a little bit. So he's one of the most beloved. He was born in 1874 in Charleston, South Carolina, okay? His mother was Mary Elizabeth. So she was the daughter of an enslaved African woman named Mariah, later known as Mary Bacot, and the white owner of the plantation.
He made it down this way at some point, didn't he?
Yes, he did. That's why we have it here. In 1920, because Louis Gregory was on a tour, essentially, after becoming a Baha'i, right? One of the things, because we're talking about the early 20th century, we're talking about the South. We are talking about Jim Crow. And
he had a wife of a different ethnicity, didn't he?
That's right. His wife was...
He's a bold brother.
Yes. Well, once again, in terms of real life, most of the time they couldn't even travel together. Not when they were down south, for sure. Right? So a lot of times she was at home and he would be traveling. So one of his journeys, one of his trips, brought him in 1920 to Huston Tillotson, where he spoke at the chapel that's there. And once again, to promote race, at this time he was calling it, it was being called race amity, okay, which is racial harmony, racial cooperation, racial understanding. That's what the thing was.
Now, when I first found out about the symposium, it kind of shocked me and hurt me at the same time. It was about race unity, but nobody knew about it here in Austin.
Okay.
This is kind of like an intellectual center. You got UT, but then you also have Huston Tillotson, which many people, including me, did not know predated UT.
That's correct. I was about to say, if you didn't say it, I was going to say it.
because a lot, I did not know that. I was actually surprised to learn it. I learned that from, I think, Dr. John Butler. He said in passing one day. And I was like, what?
Yes. That's correct.
When Butler was explaining to me the tradition of education among black folks, and which kind of made me wonder why and how we got to the point where education was not a priority for us. Educational excellence was sought during Jim Crow, during slavery, during segregation, and all that, and now it's almost like it's taboo. If you pursue educational excellence, you looked at a nerd as you're a nerd. we're buying too much of their stuff.
I understand.
We should all be nerds.
Hey, I was and still am a nerd, and so my connection, one of the other connections I have with Louis Gregory, as a person that he was the education, and specifically historically Black colleges, university. He went to Howard University Law School. I went to Howard University undergraduate school, and once again bringing it home to Huston Tillotson here in Austin. Okay, that subject that you just talked about. That's a whole big thing. But what I will say is that I personally believe and practically endorse, historically Black colleges and universities for everybody, but for sure, our young people. I think it's one of those things, and just like what you were saying, like the fact that you brought up, before the University of Texas at Austin, there was Huston Tillotson, right here in the capital of Texas. Okay, and of course there are other historically Black colleges and HBCUs around the state of Texas, right?
Right,
TSU, Prairie View, A&M. I mean, there's so many.
What's the one that the movie was about? The debate team.
Oh,
Wiley, was that Wiley? Wiley.
Yeah, Wiley. Yes. So there's so many, and just to that thing, and this is the other thing to tie it into the Bahai Faith, education. Another example. So for another belief and tenet of the Bahai Faith, right? Another main point that the founder made very clear: the equality of men and women. Stated very clearly, men and women are equal. Okay. So that for a lot of people, when you come from another thing, it's like, well, what is, so, there's more that you can get into to understand it. But here's what I want to say about that tied into education. Another example. Our founders, the people who, helped to create the structure and bring the message and all the words and everything that we now, can read for ourselves. In the event that resources are limited, okay, in a family, okay, going back to this idea of education and men and women being equal. In the event that resources are limited, and mostly we're talking about, for example, in developing nations, developing our countries, communities, whatever. Because of the fact that, women have been beneath men for so long, what's my understanding is that if resources are limited and you have to educate, maybe one at a time, the priority goes to the daughters. You educate them first. The men, the young boys will get theirs, but the education. And I know
you have a daughter default.
You have a daughter default. And that's the only.
That is different.
It's different, but it goes back to, I guess, in terms of like American, the American society. When you think about like affirmative action, I mean, if certain people have been behind, well, you got to do something to help to close that gap. So once again, I think, that sounds maybe could be like either confronting or maybe could be even considered kind of revolutionary in thinking, but on a certain level it seems very practical, right? It's like, yeah, that makes sense. You got some people that have been disadvantaged, a certain segment that's been disadvantaged. Well, you got to do something to help that out, That
kind of plays into something, another thing that I see on almost every show, which is, I believe that what's good for the Black community is good for the community, period. I just believe that.
I have to agree with you on that. I totally agree with you on that.
I mean, because if the communities are out of balance, to bring the lagging community up, to raise the level of that community, raises the level of the whole community. That's the way I see it.
I agree.
I could be wrong. I doubt it.
Well, no, I believe, and that's one of the things that we believe too. I mean, it's one of the. Like, I think this going back to Louis Gregory. I think it goes back to, it's tied into why he was doing what he was doing.
And he was a lawyer?
He was a lawyer.
So am I. So is my brother.
Yeah, see, so it ties into that. If you raise up,
the lagging part, you
So when I think about contemporary, I think about myself as a Baha'i. I think about the larger Austin community. I think about just some of the disparities that that we're aware of
Right,
here.
right.
It helps me to really kind of prioritize and focus my ideas, my energies, and my actions, personally, so that once again, okay, I've benefited by this, so how can I be a benefit to others, particularly, and who needs the benefit? Who could really use this?
Where are you originally from?
I'm originally from San Antonio, Texas.
San Antonio?
I was born on the east side of San Antonio, Texas. Lived the first couple years on the east side of San Antonio. My mother, all my people, my mother, father's people on the east side of San Antonio.
But you mentioned that you went to Howard University, went to college back east. How'd you get there? How'd you get there?
Well, I started it. Believe it or not, I started at UT because I was a nerd, so I had good grades, and I got a scholarship to UT. But then we had a friend of ours, another African American woman, businesswoman, entrepreneur. She actually was a pharmacist, and good friend of ours. And so she had gone to Howard and graduated down to Howard's pharmacy school, and so she had been talking to me and just, little bit by little bit saying, hey, you might want to, think about going to, Howard University. I'm like, okay. So I was going to UT and I was like, this is okay, but, So I went and I visited. My aunt was up there. I had some cousins that went there. That helped too. And so I went and visited and I was like, yeah, this is where I need to be. So I put my ducks in a row with my parents' help and went off to Howard University.
Went to Howard?
And wound up staying in Washington, D.C. for like 9.5 years. Didn't think I was coming back. But obviously, God always has different plans for you. So, but I'm glad I'm back. I'm very much so, because I've reconnected with my roots here.
Has it changed a lot since during the time?
Oh yeah.
From the first time you were here.
I mean, a lot has changed. I mean, Austin is one of the fastest growing cities. I got back here in '96, so yeah, it's changed quite a bit. Some of the change I'm okay with. Some of it I'm not really comfortable with.
No, but to me, Austin is kind of deceptive to me. It has this reputation of being this very liberal town. But because of I believe its policies, that the African Americans who were here have been systematically run out. I see bicycle lanes going down Rosewood, and I have never seen too many brothers and sisters riding bicycles.
Yeah.
This last mobility bond. There's a portion of that bond issue that was for more bike lanes. Yeah. And I'm wondering why they have money for bike lanes and don't have money for like low interest loans for people who own the homes already.
See, that's why I said there's parts of it that I'm like very, very much comfortable with. The other parts that I'm not. So
it's like African Americans have been banished to Pflugerville.
Well, you use the word banished. I understand. They were definitely in Pflugerville. African Americans in Pflugerville, Round Rock, Elgin, Manor, for sure. Yeah, definitely.
I mean, when you have policies that jettison them, that's kind of like being banished in my book.
I understand. And
I could be wrong.
And
I doubt it.
And I'm not going to profess to know all there is about that, because actually, when it comes to professions, I'm an artist. I'm a musician. So my head is pretty much always in that world of creativity and cooperation in that realm. But I will say, from what I understand and what I've come to believe, Austin has had a very interesting, the word is not interesting. Their racial policies and procedures historically have been pretty bad. You know what I'm saying? Like,
you mean these good liberal white folks?
Well,
not them.
I'm talking about history now. I'm talking about I'm just saying what was. I have the good fortune of being a friend of and a colleague of one of the longstanding members of the Austin African American community and music community, jazz community, Dr. James Pope, and he's been here since he came here from Corpus in the 50s, and so he told me how things used to be there. And the whole thing with the the Victory Grill and East 12th
East
Street,
West,
yeah. And East Avenue, and which is now.
Well, you had a culture on the east side of 35. It's my understanding.
Yeah, but you know how that came about.
That 1928, that ordinance?
Yeah, I want to say that's when it was. So basically, there were pockets of African Americans on the west of what now is now I-35, Clarksville being one of them. And there's like in the road, is it Rosewood? I'm trying to remember the other areas, but there are a few other areas. And most of those times, those are the servants of the people, the senators and all the people. Okay, but at a certain point, they wanted them folks out.
But in 1928, there was actually, I believe, an ordinance or something happened in 1928.
That's what I think. Yeah.
And it was divided between East and West.
Yeah,
basically.
because essentially, if the black people wanted to have services, you had
to go east.
You had to go east. And of course, the services were not the greatest, but it was public services. The waters, the lights, all that stuff was over. They would go east. So
okay.
So and then of course when desegregation happened, that's a whole other thing. But I say all that because if we get back to the importance of Louis Gregory, the reason why we want people to come out to the symposium, because all these things can be are generally discussed. I mean, maybe not. It maybe just we go deeper here. We kind of but it's kind of stay broad, but we do have some breakouts and different ways of going a little deeper.
Right.
But it's a thing of like having the conversation.
I think last year the mayor actually spoke at the symposium last year. I think.
Mm-hmm.
So we had a pretty good crowd last year.
Yeah, and this year my understanding is we're going to kind of do some breakouts, like more like kind of like TED Talks. I've understood.
Oh yeah.
So I think that would be cool too.
Last year was standing room only.
I think most of the time it's standing room only.
Oh yeah.
For the past few years, it's been standing room.
Now the first year that I went, it was kind of wasn't well attended. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to get involved in the planning and execution of it, because I thought it should be bigger than what it is.
Yeah.
And I've had talks with Dale to get his vision. Because I think, as far as I know, it's the only symposium of its kind that I know of.
Yeah.
I think there's a Presbyterian church that has something similar around in the spring.
Yeah. So if I can say this, so the symposium is it's there for people to participate, to come check out. I mean, it's going to be first of all, that may be your people's first introduction to the Bahai Faith. It's also going to be people's possibly their first introduction to the history of Austin, in terms of, like we were talking about, Huston Tillotson, UT, how Louis Gregory came here, so first introduction to Louis Gregory and other people like him. For example, I'm going to just quick sidebar. Did you know that, so Elaine Locke was a Baha'i? Are you familiar with him?
Yeah.
Okay, Also, Heman Sweat, who...
Yeah, the courthouse.
Exactly. Helped
the first black admitted to UT's law school, right?
Exactly. So these people were very instrumental in in not only carrying along this line of equality of the races. I mean, in amity.
I didn't know that about Alan Locke though.
Yeah. So all these people were there. So going back to this thing about like as Baha'is, I think we're saying, quietly and slowly and but yet consistently, share, invite, share, have conversations so that people can start to, wrap their minds around what's not only what has been. There's this idea of in the Akan of West Africa, this idea of Sankofa, which is a bird that is about to take flight, but he's looking over his shoulder. And the idea is that in order to go forward, you need to look back where you've come from, so that, as you go forward, what you're going forward.
You need to understand. You need to understand what's behind you to know how to proceed forward.
And I think that, one of the things that's good about the symposium, as far as I've ever found, is that you get to, we look at the history. We look at, how did this come to be? How did we arrive here, and where do we want to go?
You know what I read in a book about 5 months ago? It absolutely shocked me. I was reading a book by Douglas Wilder, who's you familiar with him, right? The first black governor of Virginia. I'm reading the book, and he says in his book that black people were better read in 1880 than they are today. And that Now, my baby brother has a PhD in philosophy and adult education.
Okay.
My other brother has a PhD in educational psychology. I read that, but I really didn't believe it. And I called my baby brother. I said, Daryl, is this true? And he talked to me like I was a behind and I should have known. I was like shocked, and I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, why hasn't a national emergency been declared? Because if you are not as literate as you can or should be, you have no shot in this culture.
Yeah.
That's the way I see it.
I think this is where it goes back to, for me, self-empowerment, self-determination, all those selves, right?
Right.
Because it just came up just recently, right? It just came up just recently in current events where, what was her, Betsy DeVos,
the education secretary?
When she misspoke and said something about, historically black college universities being pioneers in terms of school choice. Remember? I don't know if you remember that. Yeah. Okay. So the point I'm making, it's not about that. It's about the fact that
they were pioneers in terms of education.
Period. We need to do. We have the resources that we have. What kind of resources can we get? We need to educate our people. We need to educate our children, because they are not going to educate our children. So I'm not here to talk about. Because obviously I'm a Bahai, so we're all like, we need to come together. We're in a different, but I'm just saying, if we would look at historically, once again, looking back, there's something to be learned about that kind of self-reliance and resilience and self-determination and cooperation, because, once again, how are we going to, each one teach one, lift one up, I find like as a Bahai, I'm just going to say, as a Bahai, as an African-American Bahai, I still feel like I'm in that same place, or that place of like, I'm not asking anybody. I'm not gonna ask anybody to become a Bahai, right? But I would like, if I have the opportunity to share with them, about our, and so they can know that, it's not just this or this. There's something else too, and maybe and there's a history here. Once again, we're not talking about something that I'm stepping into the stream of water that's already flowing, you see? And it's just a matter of like, once again, expanding our minds. And then once again, where are the issues? And that's the other thing that, once again, a lot of times, I'm going back to the idea that you said about not really knowing about the symposium, which is in and of itself something, I think, entirely. But people may not even know that much about the Baha'i community at large, which we're working, but mainly because a lot of it, I'm going to say, this is my opinion, is we work quietly, and systematically, but quietly. You know, so it's not about it's not about a lot of hubbub. I mean, this is probably one of the main events that people as a whole, where it's actually promoted. Like, hey, this is and it's not even promoted as a Baha'i event, really. It's once again, it's promoted as a Louis Gregory Race Symposium. Now
I know you. I know in your faith that you generally don't recruit, don't make a lot of noise. But candidly and honestly, Dale has told me, he says I'm a Baha'i and I don't know it.
Oh yeah, that's a general. That's kind of an inside joke, as they say. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I say it about myself because I can tell you, I was raised and baptized Christian. I still read the Bible. In fact, I play at a church every Sunday, and I go to Bible study, and I'm learning more about that, right? As an adult now, I read the Bible when I was a kid and went to Sunday school, so now I'm doing it now as an adult, right? But there's nothing wrong with Christianity. There's nothing wrong with there's nothing wrong with any of these things, right? But for me and people like me, maybe you, right? It's something about, okay, well, if I'm going to if in my belonging to an organization or to a structure, there's certain, there's just certain boxes that we maybe want to check, And so for me, once I was introduced to the Bahai Faith and started to look into it and read it for myself and see it for myself, the boxes were checked. So I was like, okay, this is what I'm choosing now. But I've been through quite a few different things. I mean, at one point I was looking at Islam. I was up in Washington D.C. I'm from San Antonio, Texas. You rarely ever saw the guys with the collared shirts and the bow ties. But once I got to D.C., you know, you see them, and you see that, and you see all the, you know, because Malcolm had, you know, after Malcolm was assassinated,
Right.
you know, there was an offshoot that came from his branch, right? So you saw those people. You saw Hebrew Israelites. You saw Nubian Islamic Hebrews. You saw all these different variations, people studying and living traditional African spiritual lives in these big cities. So you start to go, well, let me at least I did. I'm like, let me check that out, because it ain't gonna hurt me to to check it out, you know.
Right. It doesn't hurt to look.
It don't hurt to look, you know. So
Now I was now my experience, my life experience has been, I grew up in I believe the oldest self-governing black community in the country.
That's
Lincoln
right.
Heights, outside Cincinnati, Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
And some of my brothers and older brothers and sisters had Isaac brothers were classmates.
Yeah.
I think my brother John, the one that became the first lawyer, when he was in high school, he used to date Nikki Giovanni, all kind of crazy.
Wow.
But
yeah. But it's community.
That's
just community.
That's just what happened. And my parents were sharecroppers.
Wow. Okay.
But they had 11 children, had 8 boys, and out of 8 boys, 4 of us had got doctorates.
Okay.
Because in that house, in my mama's house, getting good grades was a way of survival. You know, if you got good grades, you know, life was a little better for you than if you got bad grades. So you wanted to get good grades because you wanted mom and dad to be happy, to be happy with what you did. You wanted to make them proud.
Yeah.
And from what I gather now, you know, the main problem we have is family. We don't have separate but equal things in a lot of respects.
In some
but
respect,
we do have unequal families.
Okay. Okay.
And I think that's the problem. I really do at the heart of it.
That's definitely, I would have to agree with
And that's something that we have to undertake to fix. And I did not know what you said. I did not know that in the Bahai Faith, in terms of morally and a lot of other things that you want to, maybe the conservative side of the house. I didn't know that.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that as you and I, if we were to spend more time talking about and getting more into the details of it, you probably find like, oh yeah, well, we think the same thing. You know, like that's some of the same things that we believe too. So yeah. And I agree with you that, you know, the family, and so once again, the history. I mean, look at the black family, and yeah. So going back to that point that you made about how literate we were, and you know, from what we are now, I can see that. You know, I'll be 50 this year, and I remember my experience of growing up in the 70s and going to school, let's say in Texas and San Antonio, and then we moved out to California at one point, and that experience, and at that point they were busing from South Central because we lived in one of the white parts of town, so they were busing. So I found myself, you know, very much sandwiched in between the white kids that were in the neighborhood that I lived in and the black kids that were being bused in. So that's a personal thing, but So I've experienced it in my own life about how, you know, this you know, the importance of education and just how these things actually land on the young people at the time and what they do with it or what they don't with it or just what's being promoted, and it's a very challenging thing. But I think going back to this idea that we said earlier, and this is what I've come to believe too. So you have the United States society, and you know, and it has its pluses and minuses. But it always seems like that whatever the things that are affecting, you know, a good percentage of people, it's really affecting those people at the bottom, quote unquote. It's socioeconomically that it really affects these communities, you know, because once again, it seems like it's always been like that. But going back to what you said, your mother and father, right? It's almost like there's nothing to go back to, so that everything is forward, right? So my great-grandparents, same thing. My great-grandparents, in fact, my parents live there now. My great-grandparents bought 211 acres right outside of San Antonio, right? And farmed with their family, you know? So I come from that thing too, you know, and I feel very grateful that I have that to draw on, you know? So you go, wow, well, that's how it. I mean, they didn't have any education, and they acquired this. So and why did they acquire it? Did they acquire it so they could have bragging rights? No, it's like, it's like, this is what we need to do in order to push this thing one step further. So, and it's in their own way. I think of it, and it goes back to that. And this talks about we deal with this in Bahai Faith too, about the dignity and the humanity of every individual. So for me and for your parents, right? For my great grandparents and your parents, right? In their own way, their dignity, their humanity. This is just their, however small it may seem, at the moment. It's been kind of, but it has long-lasting effects. So I think there's been a breakdown of family. There's been a breakdown of community, and I think like what you're saying, we can do this, but it's going to take some time. It's going to take some attention. It's going to take some action, and some getting real as.
You got to.
Not browbeat people, but definitely.
I went to an education summit that was sponsored by the Chamber of Commerce a couple of years ago.
Okay.
And there was a little Caucasian girl or two who basically raised the question, I don't know how to teach these kids, meaning African American kids.
Okay.
And I kind of look at that two ways.
Okay.
It's like I appreciate it because she was honest.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of feeds into something that I guess I believe because of the circumstances in which I grew up.
Okay.
I don't believe that a little Caucasian girl who went to Smith, UT, someplace, could teach my child what he needs to know. Might be telling him some things about math and English and things like that, but about the intangible things in life.
I got you.
Her reality is different than what my kid's reality would be, and that's it may be sad, may be regrettable, but that's probably true.
There's a part of me that I understand what you're saying, and there's a part of me that I think I can understand and I can believe that on some level. And at the same time, though, I also want to keep an open mind.
Right.
I'm not saying that you don't have it. I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is to say that, well, like young lady. So if she wants to teach,
right?
She wants to learn. Then she wants to learn. Okay, so then hopefully she will. The resources will be made available to her, or she'll find the resources.
Basically, I looked at it as like a cry for help almost.
Thank you very much.
Because it's not. I'm not running her down. Anything.
Of course not.
She's just being real.
Of course,
she's just being honest.
And the other thing too is so to the point that you made, right? Yes, it is our responsibility. It's not other people's responsibility,
Right.
It is just like, for example, as a Baha'i, right? It's my responsibility as a Baha'i to share the Baha'i faith, exemplify the Baha'i faith to my children, right? Through various means to do that, right? But that's my responsibility. I can't expect someone else to do something, once again, some of those things that are maybe not as tangible.
Right.
I shouldn't expect that of other people. But I do believe, going back to this idea, though, that we're all one.
I can't say it can't be done.
No. And here's the thing. At the end of the day, we all need each other. You see what I'm saying? We all need each other so we can learn, so we can grow. Though we might have.
We're all in this boat together.
We're all in the boat together.
If the boat sinks, we all going down. Some people think if this boat you call the United States sink, that they're gonna be all right. Really? Where you going?
Yeah,
the Grand Canyon somewhere. Hang out.
Well, at that point, the Grand Canyon might be the West Coast.
Pacific
Ocean might be right there.
It might be powderized for all we know.
Yeah, so I really think that it's important. I think once again, if people are keeping an open mind, they want to reach out, they want help, then
And this symposium is it's going to be half a day again?
Yeah, from 1 to 4:30. Okay. So you can get there early, register, and then at 1 o'clock the actual formal things will start. It's going to be at the at Huston Tillotson College, Thursday, April the 6th, 11th annual, and it's going to be in the Asgard, where's that? Oh, Asgard Loving Good Auditorium.
Auditorium?
Yeah, that's where we're going to start.
That's where it was last year.
Yeah. Yeah.
We barely had no space last year.
Exactly, exactly. And once again, because you have, people from the Baha'i community, you have people, the Austin community at large, different organizations. You have the Huston Tillotson community, student body. A lot of professors,
Right.
ask their students to come to the symposium, which is always, because once again, multi-generational.
Right.
We need all these, everybody has a place at the table, and so generationally speaking, because once again, like very much, I'm sure like when you were coming up as a young person, right? You want to say, where's the place that I can speak my mind and where I can share my ideas? Because yes, we need to learn from the elders. We definitely need the elders,
Right.
but we need some young people too. Because sometimes the elders, if they've been doing whatever they've been doing for a while, they're kind of tired. They might not even have the energy.
Right.
So you need that youth to do that. So, yeah.
Well, to get the different kinds of energy.
Energy, and I think that's how these things change. I mean, I can only imagine like when Baha'u'llah and his followers were, in Iran, and he was a young man, or probably, somewhere young, middle-aged, 30s, 40s. So, I mean, he was putting these things together. I mean, it takes energy, it takes time, it takes, these kind of sacrifices in order to really, bring this to light, for lack of a better term, And so now, like I was saying, the Baha'i Faith, I'm very grateful for the Baha'i community. I mean, on many different levels. It's spiritually, in the level of, areas of like justice, social justice, equality, things of this nature, education, like we were talking about. I'm with you on that one for sure. Yeah.
Well, I still can't wrap my mind around what Doug Wilder wrote.
Well, I guess
and that is true.
Yeah, we have to read some more and find out just once again what is that. And
my head's been spinning for about 6 months.
Really? I mean,
they could read. Black people could read better in 1880 than 2017.
I know.
2012 when that book was written.
Mm-hmm.
That's over 100 years.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing. I came up at a time. Once again, I consider myself very fortunate. I came up with good parents and good grandparents in a strong community. So the community always basically let you know what they were expecting you to do, how to behave, what not to do. Okay.
Well, we had our own institutions then.
Yeah.
And then you had the neighborhoods.
Yeah.
In my neighborhood, if you was messing up in one part of town,
yeah,
you might get disciplined in that part of town, and when you got home, your mom and daddy already heard about it. So you might catch it twice.
I definitely I wasn't in the midst of the throes of that, but I definitely spent much time with both sets of my grandparents on the east side of San Antonio, because by this time we had moved to the suburbs and everything, that whole thing.
Right.
But which was fine, because once again here's why I say that it was fine, because once again what is the word? It made sure, right, that I had to deal with people of all.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? This is
all kind of people.
All kind of people, which I very much, I like that, because I think, here's the thing, when it comes to like the black community, it's very important that we do what we can to maintain and strengthen and the cohesiveness, all that stuff. I really believe that. And at the same time, the world is smaller, right? The people,
right.
So we got to get beyond however that is. We got to get, either people, we have to bring new ideas in, or whenever possible, these young people need to get out, and go hear some new ideas and see some new other ways of living, I think that's what makes the difference, that exposure,
Well, I think it's more that we in our community need to focus and concentrate on what we can do for ourselves, period.
And let me ask you, and this is regardless of political affiliation or any.
I don't care about that.
Okay, or denomination or anything like that.
Except because I happen to be a conservative, there are too many places I go in my neighborhood where guys want to fight, people want to fuss and call you names and think something wrong with you.
Okay.
Because you voted different than they voted.
Yeah.
Like something's wrong with you.
Okay. Yeah, well, see, once again, I think going back to that idea that you said about literacy in terms of the black community, I'm going to say and I don't know for sure. I'll do some research on it, but it seems like overall Americans are less literate. Possibly.
Yeah. I'm not saying it's just us.
No, I know. That's what I'm saying. I just want to bring that to this conversation.
And that's been pointed out to me by some other conservative friends. Say, no, everybody's reading this down.
Yeah. So we can't even have.
But to me, it's more expensive for my people.
I understand. I totally understand. I had a, it was interesting. When I went to Howard, I'd been going to UT, right? And I went to Howard. It was some culture shock. Part of it was just from going from, predominantly white university to predominantly black university, right? But the other part about it was some of this stuff that you're talking about, where I'm sitting in class with other African-American students that are coming from some of these major cities like Cincinnati, like Detroit, like New York. And you could tell, like, the education level, I wasn't at the end, but it seemed like, wow,
right.
Their education, we had a different education. So it was very, very eye-opening.
See, for me, it was just reverse. I came from pretty much an all-black community. Now, the college I went to was Dennis University in Granville, Ohio.
Okay.
It's 2,000 students. You had about 40 black students.
Okay.
And half of them talking like this.
Yeah.
They're pretty much middle class, upper middle class. They're so upper middle class, sometimes you just walk around talking about, man, I'm so broke, and I'm thinking to myself, when you broke, I'm bragging about how broke you are. You shut up.
That's funny. Yeah.
Like the more broke you are, the more black you are. If that was the case, I was the blackest thing on campus.
Yeah. So before, I just want to say also, there's a good book that's about Louis Gregory called "To Move the World," and it's by Gail Morrison. So she wrote this about. She's a Bahai, and she wrote this book about his life. It's a really good book, and I recommend it. He talks about his experience.
I might have to get that one here because he's a bold brother. I did not know. I did not know he was a lawyer though. I didn't know that.
Yeah, he was a lawyer. But once again,
I had read a little on him.
Once again, this generation,
they put education first.
And so he made that for himself, and then he wanted to help others. Yeah.
Well, we're just about out of time here.
Okay.
And my wife will be putting up the credits in a minute. I hope she will.
So come on out Thursday.
Yeah, come on out Thursday.
April the 6th.
1:30?
1 to 4:30.
1 to 4:30?
Yes, the 11th annual Louis Gregory.
11th or 11 or 12? 11?
1. Oh, you talking? No,
It's
the 11th. The 11th annual.
It's
a nonprofit, and Huston Tillotson University.
Okay.
Yeah, those two.
I want to thank you for joining me this evening, people. This was Michael Stevens from the Bahai Faith Center discussing the Racial Symposium that's going to be held this Thursday at 1 to 4:30.
That's correct.
Please come out. And thank you for joining me. And thank you, Mr. Stevens, for